At the beginning of the movie, we see a nun walking on a sidewalk. Then a girl named Grace appears, walking while narrating that her brother always believed she had a guardian angel, though she herself never believed in such things. Now, however, she isn't so sure. Suddenly, a nun appears in front of her, points a gun at her, and the scene fades to black. We are then taken a few days earlier. Grace, an eye specialist, is shown with a patient, an elderly woman named Mrs. Tu, who is suffering from severe eye problems. Grace refers her to a senior doctor who also happens to be her mentor. From her window, she later watches Mrs. Tu and her husband as they leave. Soon after, Grace discusses the old woman's case with her friend and mentor, John, who agrees to treat her. The scene then shifts to Grace's home. She lives alone with her cat, Moo. Later, while sending an email to Mrs. Tu, the internet suddenly cuts out and the lights go off on their own. As she gets up to check the switch, she begins hearing strange noises. Thinking it might be Moo, she investigates, but then notices blood smeared across her brother's face in a childhood photograph. In the mirror, she sees a nun standing with her back turned behind her. When Grace quickly turns around, no one is there. As she cautiously moves forward, her phone rings. The caller, Detective Harris, informs her that her brother Michael's body has been found at a convent in Scotland. He explains they are investigating the possibility of a murder-suicide. The shocking news of her brother's death leaves Grace devastated.
Comment. Subscribe to Recapss Horror.
Grace then travels to Scotland, where she meets Detective Harris and tells him she wants to see her brother. Harris explains that her brother is currently with the coroner, but offers to take her to the convent to show her the place where the death occurred. On the way, Harris explains that Father Carroll, who had come from Rome to visit the convent, was found murdered in the chapel, his torso sliced open. Nearby, her brother's body was discovered on the rocks beneath the ruins of the old church. The working assumption is that he killed Father Carroll and then took his own life. Grace insists her brother would never kill anyone, nor would he commit suicide. Harris asks how her brother became involved with such an extreme sect. She admits she has no idea, as she hasn't seen him in a long time, and asks what he means by extreme. Harris explains that the convent follows a very rigid fire and brimstone interpretation of the Bible. A few weeks earlier, one of the nuns claimed to have seen the devil. She gouged out her own eye and was attempting to remove the other before fainting. Grace defends her brother, saying he was devout but not insane, and she has never been interested in religion. At the convent, they meet the Mother Superior. She tells Grace that before her brother fell into darkness, he was loved by everyone. When Grace asks what she means, the Mother Superior claims it was not her brother, but a demon that killed Father Carroll, and that her brother had the strength of mind to resist it, tragically ending his own life in the process. Grace demands to know if she actually saw Michael kill himself, but the Mother Superior only gives a vague reply, saying indirectly yes, since the eyes of God are on us all. Irritated by her cryptic words, Grace grows frustrated, and Harris steps in to calm her. As they leave, the Mother Superior's hands are shown bloodied from gripping a cross too tightly. Harris then takes Grace to the ruins where Michael died, showing her the spot from which he jumped and explaining that his body was found on the rocks below. Grace moves closer and carefully examines the place. The scene cuts to her arriving at the coroner's, where she finally sees Michael's body. Looking at him, she breaks down in tears, strokes his hair, and studies his face. As she examines his body, Michael suddenly appears behind her, warning her that the place is not safe and urging her to leave. The scene shifts to a childhood memory of Michael saving her during a storm as they run home together. Grace wakes up in the convent's infirmary, where a nun is attending to her. Soon, Father Romero arrives. He has come from the Vatican to investigate the tragedy, and he tells her that she had fainted in the morgue. Grace insists that Michael's body was completely clean. There was no sand on him, not even in his hair, despite the fact that he was found on the beach. Romero explains that sometimes bodies are washed before an autopsy, but Grace remains firm that there was no sand at all. Father Romero assures her that he will look into it further. He then asks if she has any family left. Grace tells him that her mother has passed away and her father is in prison for her mother's death. With that, Father Romero leaves. Later, Grace falls asleep and has a vision in which she sees a girl wearing a mask. Suddenly, knights storm in to capture that girl, causing chaos as everyone flees. Grace jolts awake, quickly removes the medical equipment attached to her body, and escapes. The next day, she takes a taxi to the ruins where Michael's body was found. She sees the remains of an old, broken church, but when she looks again, the ruins appear as a fully intact building. To her horror, she watches one nun after another jump to their deaths. Overwhelmed by the terrifying visions, Grace faints again and falls into the sea. When she regains consciousness, she finds herself back in the convent, dressed as a nun. She steps out of the room and asks a nun about Mother Superior, but the nun lowers her head silently without replying. Grace then notices a group of nuns walking together and follows them, eventually reaching a hall where everyone is having lunch. She confronts Mother Superior, accusing her of concealing evidence and lying in her statement. Grace insists that her brother was already badly injured before he fell. Mother Superior asks how she knows this, but Grace has no clear answer. The mother explains that life here is disciplined, reminds her that it is lunchtime, and offers her food. When Grace asks for her phone, Mother tells her that the taxi driver pulled her from the sea, but her phone was ruined in the water. She adds that Grace's clothes are drying, and then asks if Grace doesn't believe in miracles. Grace firmly says no. Later, Father Romero takes Grace to the ruined site, explaining that a 12th century church once stood there, founded by the Knights of the Morning Star. Though powerful, many believed they were influenced by a dark force that even tainted the nuns. Showing her a cross with a snake carved into the ground, he says it was their ultimate confessional, where knights stepped back for each sin until forgiveness was earned. Some entered as murderers and left as saints. When Grace notes they fell to their deaths, Romero replies, "God caught them." Back at the convent, Father Romero confirms that Grace's suspicions were correct. Michael's body had indeed been washed before the autopsy. He informs her that Detective Harris will soon arrive for questioning, as the matter is serious and concerns the church's reputation. Romero reassures her that she has the church's full support and that he will personally handle the situation. He then shows her Michael's belongings, suggesting she might find something useful among them, and tells her she can stay as long as she wishes. While going through his things, Grace discovers Michael's journal. The journal is filled with strange, symbolic writing, yet Grace is able to read it. Through it, we learn that Grace was adopted, has no memory of her life before adoption, but possessed the ability to see things others could not. A flashback then shows young Grace asleep in her room, overhearing a man say that her adoptive father had drowned, and his body was missing. Returning to the present, Grace is shaken when she sees a nun's reflection in her mirror, though the door remains shut. When she opens it, no one is there. Elsewhere, Mother Superior and the other nuns are confronted by Roberto, who angrily scolds them for telling the police that a demon killed Father Carroll. Mother Superior argues that he should not have given Grace the book. Roberto shouts, "There is one God, and then me. In that order, I will decide Grace's fate." Mother asks, "What if you are wrong?" and warns that Grace cannot be trusted. Roberto counters, saying 2 priests are already dead and accusing her of being the untrustworthy one. Mother insists he is underestimating Grace's power just then. The candles go out. Back in her room, Grace continues reading Michael's journal. He had written, "The darkness came into our lives, disguised as a miracle." A flashback shows young Grace praying to God not to let her father die. Suddenly, she hears his voice outside, rushes to the window, and briefly sees him. He vanishes, only to appear behind her. She turns, and the scene cuts back to the present, where Grace hears a nun named Meg crying out for help. Grace follows the sound to a hidden spot and sees Sister Meg slitting her wrists. But moments later, Meg appears behind her, revealing it was just another vision. The two speak, and during their conversation, Grace asks for Meg's help in using a phone. Meg agrees, and Grace calls her friend John, confiding that she has been experiencing visions and telling him everything. Suddenly, Mother Superior arrives, and Grace quickly ends the call. Mother Superior tells her she needs help and asks about her visions. Grace demands that she stay away, but Mother Superior calmly replies that the visions are fragments of both her past and her future. The scene cuts to Detective Harris questioning the Mother Superior. She admits that she personally washed Michael's body, explaining that his body had crabs on it, and it needed to be presented pure before God. She adds that whatever had possessed him to commit those evil acts had already left him. Harris, however, is skeptical. He says, "Father Carroll lies dead, yet you decided to carry Michael from the beach and wash his body yourself?" The Mother Superior agrees, but Harris clearly doesn't believe her. She warns him that, even as they speak, a battle between God and Satan is raging. Meanwhile, Grace speaks with Father Romero, who asks if she found anything among Michael's belongings. She tells him she discovered his journal. Romero replies that he had seen it, but noticed it's written in an ancient language. Grace corrects him, saying it's actually a childhood code. When Romero asks if she can translate it, Grace says yes. They created it right before their mother died, so they could write things no one else would understand. Later, Grace begins decoding the journal. Michael wrote that Grace always tried to protect him from the darkness, but now the darkness had returned. Another flashback reveals how their father had changed after coming home. Once calm and devoted to God, he had become violent and cruel. He locked Grace, Michael, and their mother in cages. One day, Grace wrapped a key in paper and called her father by banging on the cage, pretending she needed to use the washroom. Angrily, he took her upstairs, but on the way, she secretly threw the key near her mother's cage, allowing her to escape. As Grace tried to free Michael, they suddenly heard their mother screaming. Looking through the window, Grace saw her father stabbing their mother to death. Horrified, she ran upstairs. Her father searched for her, eventually entering the room where she was hiding under the bed. Suddenly, someone attacked him, and he collapsed to the ground. Back in the present, Grace tells Father Romero that she and Michael had once nearly been adopted by the church. She had forgotten, but Michael remembered. That was why he returned. As Romero explains, he dismisses the blinded nun, then reveals that Mother Superior said Michael had been searching for a relic. He explains that the original church once housed such a relic. When Grace asks where it is now, Romero tells her that during the 1993 earthquake, the church collapsed and the relic sank underwater. The relic carried an evil force that corrupted people, leading to its misuse and tarnishing the church's reputation. He adds that there are books in the church archives detailing its history. Another flashback shows a nun and a priest arriving to adopt Grace and Michael. The nun asks about Grace's birth certificate, but is told she doesn't have one, as she had taken her adoptive parents' name. On the way to the church, the priest suddenly forces Michael out of the car and drives off with Grace. But just ahead, a truck collides with their car, resulting in a terrible accident. In the present, Grace is seen studying the old books that Father Romero mentioned. Just then, a nun arrives with a book, telling her that Romero sent it for her, and she leads all the other nuns away, leaving Grace alone. As Grace opens the book, she realizes that the code language she believed she and Michael had invented was actually an ancient language. The book reveals that the Knights of the Morning Star once guarded the relic. A flashback shows them imprisoning a masked girl, calling her the Vessel of Darkness. Back in the present, Grace finds herself completely alone. She steps outside to look around and notices a basement door standing open. There is no light inside, but she enters. There, she begins to see visions of how Michael was tortured. Father Carroll questions him about the relic, but Michael insists he doesn't know where it is. The sisters then jump on a heavy wooden plank placed on Michael's body, crushing him with their weight. Finally, the Mother Superior orders Michael taken to the ruins to make peace with God, but he suddenly stabs Father Carroll. Back in the present, a nun suddenly appears before Grace, holding a knife. She tells her, "Do not be afraid. I am the lamb. You are the wolf." She lunges to attack, but an invisible force shields Grace, causing the nun to stab herself instead. She then falls to her knees in submission before Grace. The scene cuts to Detective Harris, interrogating Grace. He says, "I read your notes from your journal. "You never actually told me you lived around here," Grace responds. "I know why they killed him. If you had read my notes, you would know why Michael was there. He was chasing a missing relic, something powerful and important. I think they were afraid of it. They tried to use Michael to find it, but he wouldn't help them, and now they're using me." Harris finds her explanation strange, dismissing it as just a story. He locks her in a cell where even the Mother Superior had been imprisoned in another cell. The next day, Grace is released after Father Romero and another nun testify on her behalf, though she admits she was alone when Sister Mary stabbed herself. Harris tells her she is free and should go home, but Grace insists that the Mother Superior killed her brother. Grace visits her father in jail. He tells her, "I'm not your father. Your father is in hell." When she asks why he beat them, starved them, caged them, and killed her mother, he replies, "I adopted you. I tried to love you as my own, but you are the devil's own. I should have killed you, but instead I kept you in a cage so you'd hurt no one. I died in the storm." She tells him that Michael is dead. He yells, "Bring him back! Save him like you did me. I should have drowned with the others." He reminds her that the night she prayed, it wasn't God who answered. It was darkness that took him. He recounts, finding her on the beach at 10 years old, alone, cold, wet, and shivering, thrown into the sea to die. Yet she survived. Wherever she goes, he warns, death and destruction follow her. He suddenly bangs his head against the glass, and Grace flees in terror. Meanwhile, Father Romero prepares for a consecration while the nuns lie on the floor. Detective Harris asks the Mother Superior what she wanted from Michael. She reveals that Michael had found a relic and was meant to return it to them. God's will is in motion. Michael did not know the relic's full power. It must be purified, cleansed, and contained once more. When Harris asks if the relic is not an object, but a person, the Mother Superior confirms, Grace is the relic. Meanwhile, Grace reaches the chapel and sees the nuns lying on the ground. The one-eyed nun glares at her. She meets Sister Meg and asks where Father Romero is. Meg replies that the Mother Superior said Grace would be responsible for their end. The one-eyed nun attacks, but an invisible force snaps her wrist. Seeing this, Meg flees, and the invisible force hurls the other nun aside. Grace follows Meg to a hideout, the same scene she had envisioned earlier. Meg cuts her wrist just as Grace had foreseen. Grace tries to help stop the bleeding. In the mirror, Grace sees herself walking toward herself and realizes she is the relic.
You're still watching? Good. Like, comment, and subscribe to Recapss Horror.
Frightened, she returns to the chapel and asks Father Romero for help. "Something is wrong with me. I'm cursed. I see things. Meg is dead, and I saw it beforehand." Romero replies, "You are not cursed. You are blessed." She pleads for it all to stop. Romero assures her he can help and invites her to join the sermon to be absolved. The nuns gather, lift her, and take her to a chamber. Romero asks if she will admit her sins and seek cleansing from the Holy Spirit. She agrees. He orders the nuns to consecrate her. They open the chamber's lid, and Grace steps inside. The walls are inscribed. She must be contained for eternity, as her power is a threat to Christ. The story flashes back to when Grace, as a child, was captured and kept in the church's chamber because she is a relic. She disappeared in 1993 when the church collapsed into the water. In the present, Grace hears Romero say, "Dear God, let her dwell once again and bring the weight of all heaven upon this tomb." Suddenly, Romero notices movement above. Grace stops the chamber lid from closing, and an invisible force attacks Romero. The nuns panic. Grace emerges and confronts Romero. "So that was your plan? To bury me alive? Whatever happened to forgiveness?" Romero replies, "Christ died for the sins of man, not to forgive the sins of a fallen angel." Grace asks, "Is that what I am?" He says, "You are the darkness that proves the light. That is why you hate God and lost touch with your brother. It is him you should ask for forgiveness." She runs, and the scene cuts to Harris, searching the convent for her. Meanwhile, Grace is seen in the ruins, confessing her sins before a carved cross, ready to fall. Harris stops her. she says. It's the only way. Harris warns her it's just a myth fed to her, but she falls anyway. While falling, she recalls everything. She realizes that the girl in the nun's attire she saw was herself. She had saved herself from her father, rescued Michael, and caused the events at the church. The candle going out, Sister Mary stabbing herself, attacking the one-eyed nun, and Romero were all her doing. She remembers Michael being forced to jump off the cliff by the Mother Superior. She arrived, and the nuns felt her presence. She tried to save him, but he insisted, like you saved Dad? I have to do this, but God will catch me, he tells Grace. You are good, and falls. In the present, Harris witnesses Grace's fall. Her body is never found. Later, Detective Harris asks the Mother Superior why she did what she did in the church that led a girl like Grace to attempt suicide. The Mother Superior reveals that Grace is not dead. She possesses incredible power, and she will continue to use it for evil until she is stopped. The scene cuts to Grace with John. He asks if she is fine and how her therapy is going. She says her memory is weak. Her body remembers, but her mind cannot. John mentions seeing her patient Mrs. 2, who now has perfect sight. She explains it was a miracle and Grace healed her. This shows Grace using her powers for good, though fully embracing her true identity could unleash destruction. The movie ends with Mother Superior attempting to kill Grace, but being hit by a car, dying instantly. Grace's voiceover says, "My brother used to believe I had a guardian angel. I used to believe in nothing, but now I'm not so sure." With this, the film loops back to its opening scene. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky.